Welcome to the first episode of Notch by Notch with Hotch, where we teach retail investors the secrets and hidden truths that hide in the financial industry. Essentially, this is going to be a channel for retail education. Our first guest is Kevin Malone of Malone Wealth Management. He is a registered investment advisor representative, a second generation financial advisor with over 40 years of family experience in wealth management. He launched Malone Wealth in 2021, driven by his lifelong dream to start his own registered investment advisory firm. He was aiming to bring his expertise to families looking to grow their wealth, and Malone emphasizes his pattern recognition skills and commitment to extensive data research as what differentiates him from other financial advisors. His investment philosophy is centered on rigorous research, disciplined risk management, and a long term approach to maximize returns while minimizing risk with a goal to outperform benchmark indices and reduce tax burdens for his clients. So, without further ado, let's get right into the episode.
Printing money out of thin air, banks create a dream. Loans based on credit and infinite liquidity, nothing's as it seems. Assets backed in the vaults, no, that's just a guarantee. Fractional reserve lending is quite risky. Join the tally stick and see.
Thanks for joining for the first episode of Notch by Notch with Hotch. Our first guest is Kevin Malone, who is the head of Malone Wealth Management and also Malone Wealth Charitable Fund. Kevin, nice to have you. Thanks for joining.
Hey, Hodge, what's happening, buddy?
Enjoying the day. It's been a cold one now that I got back from Florida. It was a solid week of negative temperatures.
Oh, Florida was amazing. 75 and clear the whole time. I went in the ocean like 5 times because I'm used to the West Coast water where, everyone thinks like California sun and stuff. The Pacific Ocean is so ungodly cold that it's unbelievable. Like I was swimming in December in Florida last week and it was like bath water compared to over there in the summertime. But it was great. Sorry you're back in the cold, man. I'm back in the cold too.
As a registered investment advisor representative, what are your thoughts on that process? The bank regulation pipeline to the banking industry.
I mean, it's always been at the top, right? They've always been at the top. The Federal Reserve getting created, the gold standard getting abolished, the fact of her joining B of A after her father and stuff, but also being on the banking committee, it's just been happening forever. It's ridiculous. Like, absolutely absurd that the people regulating are the people in charge. It's like it would be the same thing if police officers were the jury. Would it not?
That's a good equivalency. That is a very good equivalency.
It's unbelievable.
They would know how to get out of it.
Yeah, the people making the mistakes, almost crashing the world economies in 2008, taking more than $25 billion in overdraft fees, are the ones that get to regulate themselves just like FINRA, who regulates small financial institutions and statewide institutions like myself, is made up of Goldman CEOs, Edward Jones CEOs, Schwab insiders, and directors. And they're the ones that get to regulate everyone that's smaller than them. What's the number one goal of a bank or a giant brokerage? To acquire as many assets as possible, right? So if they get to impose the fines on small people or large, then I could end up getting the same fine Citadel does after they place tens of billions of illegal trades and I word something wrong on an advertisement piece. It's insane. There is no regulatory judicial system, whether it's banking, whether it's brokerages, whether it's individual advisors like myself. It's all coming from the top, and they can do whatever they want. They're just trying to acquire as many as possible.
How do you think younger generations are going to be able to like deal with wealth building in a skewed market with regulators that work for the banks after they're done regulating? Like, are are people or younger people more specifically interested in that at all, or do they not care? And it's more so just like your seasoned investors that get upset with, the clear conflict of interest that is going on.
There's actually been an amazing switch with young people because there's been more bank branches closed in the last 3 years than ever in history. Individual investors or just young people that just got out of high school, the 20 to 35-year-olds trying to build wealth or do banking, they have apps that these banks have never even heard of. They haven't used cash in 3 years. It's awesome. You don't have to use Wells Fargo and Bank of America for everything anymore. You can send money around the world within seconds, even though they'll charge you for wire fees if you do it through their banks. But yet I can Venmo someone in China in a couple of minutes for free, And so there's been an awesome switch of younger people realizing that they don't need big banks. And there's also been them just realizing that they've screwed up forever. Like they keep causing the financial crises. And so they're like, you know what? I'm just going to pay my buddies with 1/10,000th of a Bitcoin for pizza last night instead of having to have all my money at a giant institutional bank that pays me 0.01% interest per year.
And charges you massive fees to do
Yep.
transfers. Like if in that example where you said, send somebody money in China or whatever the
Yeah.
country may, a wire transfer is going to have lofty fees versus crypto having absolute minimal depending on what layer and chain specifically you're using.
Exactly. There's no reason. It's all just numbers on a computer. There's no need for a wire fee. Like numbers, even stocks as well. It's like an email or a text message. It can go through my bank account to yours, this fake share to this fake share account, because they're all held at the DTCC and Seed & Co. But it's just a click of a button, but they're still going to write out those fees as long as they can, right? Like, why would you not if people just keep paying? I mean, they're probably making $35 million a day on 1 million wires for the largest banks. So, why stop? I wouldn't either, but I do know that the younger people struggling to afford life right now aren't, they're going to see a $35 fee on a bank and they're going to be like, okay, well, I can instantly transfer to my payment app and then I can instantly transfer to someone else for free. All right, I'm going to do that.
Right. It's almost a no-brainer. It makes sense. The reason why I have been making videos every day for the past 4 months defining single financial terminology uh, in less than 2 minutes, usually from 30 to 45 seconds, is because when I was learning finance and crypto and this whole world, we'll go with, I found it hard. Like if you went to Investopedia, there were examples. So I'll use one that happened. Chris Williamson, notorious for it. So he had his podcast where he was discussing financial matters, and on the day that he was doing a recording and talking about what uh, a depression is, or sorry, not a depression, a recession.
Recession.
The definition was originally 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. Now, if you go to Investopedia, you can find that they changed that. They literally changed the definition
They literally
when
changed
the
it in 2022.
US, well, yeah, because the US was technically in a recession.
Yeah, but they didn't
So,
want to admit it.
exactly. So they
What did they
changed
do?
the definition. They changed it. So people like me who are learning this stuff and were like, wait a minute, I've always known it as 2 months of negative GDP growth. How did it all of a sudden change to a consensus amongst a certain group to determine whether it's a recession or not? There needs to be definitions. We can't just change words because we want to. It's
Yeah, because it
words
doesn't
have
line with the top's goals.
right.
Like, oh, so we just had 2 negative GDP growth quarters, and that's been the definition of recession forever. But we don't believe we're in a recession, so there is what CNBC and Fox News and CNN and every single news station said. They just changed the term. We're in a recession. Just like in 2020, when we're in a pandemic, and regardless of anyone's stance on COVID and vaccines and everything like that, we were. And the first move you have to make is to protect the world. I get all of that. The stuff afterwards was something we won't get into. But then all of our markets in the US go to all-time highs. Our housing goes up 30%. The Fed and the government combined print out $8 trillion and just send it to everyone. And then 2 years later, after they said, oh, it's just transitory inflation, then I'm looking at my computers like, are these people all complicit? It's like the exact scene in The Big Short when they go to Standard & Poor's, S&P. They're like, we need a rating on this. We're like, well, if we don't give it AAA, then Moody's down the road will give it that. And then everything just keeps going up. And it's only going up because there's just unlimited checks going to people. And Jesus Christ, we just saw the New York governor or mayor, I mean, it's all pretty much one city, but is going to give a bunch of money out for inflation or to combat inflation. And I'm just like, this is just as stupid as the entire United States are. Like
The $300 for the couple million people.
California did it too. Like, hey, inflation relief checks, which is the biggest fucking oxymoron I've probably ever heard in my entire life. I'm gonna just leave it at that. Like that
You
is
can't tell, but I was just dying when you just said that. Too true. Oh, the Inflation Reduction Act is
we'll give
supposed
you
to
money.
reduce
Yeah.
inflation, yet
Okay. It's unbelievable. No, I get it, Hodge. And you were talking about a bank video earlier too when it comes to money, regulatory, and inflation. Do you still have that one?
of course I will play it right now. This is a perfect example of how there is a specific pipeline from the regulators that are in charge of being the police of the industry transition into their later career, which is working for the banks that is directly skirting those regulations. So I'll throw the clip up for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I want
The
to see it.
gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Hollingsworth, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, good afternoon. I'm excited to be here with each of you. Before I get started on my questions, Mr. Moynihan, I wanted to let you know, Saruthi, raise your hand, Saruthi. She has been my team member for a couple of years now, but on Monday, she becomes a Bank of America team member, about which she is very, very excited. So I hope you'll take good care of her and know and recognize the talent that she has shown already in our office. I'm sure she'll do the same at Bank of America.
We will do that, and her father already works for us, so he'll take care of it.
You should have called us.
Well, good. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to chat about some of these issues today. What I'm really interested in is the state of the economy.
How are you floating your resume to big banks? I mean, you're supposed to be the ones, policing the big banks. I mean,
Grow up, Jamie.
there must be some kind of law against working for a financial institution right after you've been working in financial regulation, right?
No. No.
Hey! Doggy!
Hey, come over here. What are you doing at
He's
Caesars?
a Goldman. Yeah.
Her father already works for us, so he'll take care of it.
You should have called us.
So Kevin, what do you think of that video?
They're all just laughing together. One of them's interviewing the other person like they just had dinner the night before. Like, oh yeah, remember my father was on there. Like, yeah, well, you should have called us instead. It's fucking ridiculous. Like, there's one person investigating the other while they're cracking up because they just hung out all weekend. Oh, the daughter gets upgraded to Bank of America just like her dad was from the banking commission, and God, it pisses me off. It's like they're just they are laughing in everyone else's face. It's just all for show. Like, we have to film this because it's in the Constitution and stuff for us to, and I don't know that for a fact, but our government is supposed to be protecting us and to be visible. And so they have these meetings, and then they're always like, oh yeah, remember those steaks last weekend? I'm glad your daughter got in. We all promoted her. It's insane.
So, considering that specific clip at the end was part of The Big Short, do you think that they were bragging?
100%. What person in the United States, what person above the age of 80 or below the age of 40 is watching that meeting? So there's 3/4 of the population. And then the people in between that age, which one of them like just started chuckling because they have no idea what they're talking about, and which 1% knew that they were bragging about it and promoting from within? That wasn't a hearing. That was like a board meeting.
Kevin, the banks are still laughing at us as they always have. How do we change regulations, not just in banking, but in the stock market as well?
It's gonna be hard, man. Congress has been insider trading for years. They get all of the info on these companies that they get to rule on. They have hearings on these companies that they get to rule on. They get to make the decision on it. I've been saying this for years that the people that are making the laws are benefiting the most. So the system is completely broken. You would have to convince a majority of them to stop liking money. I don't have a solution for how to fix it. And the banking world always been like that, but they've all been together. Big bank CEOs are definitely, having mimosa breakfasts on their yachts and everything together because they're not worried about competing against each other anymore. They're worried about sucking up the smallest banks possible and combining them all into their own under assets. But when it comes to stock market, there is still competing factors. But as far as regulatory goes, like I just said, you have to get all of these people to vote against this insider information and these speaking fees from market makers, hedge funds, brokerages to then change a law. It's insane. There shouldn't be able to be a single dollar given to them or a benefit or information because they're the only ones that can make this right through the 3 branch system, and they all get the benefit of it. I don't have any. I would love for someone to tell me how it's going to be done, because the only possible explanation I have is that, not even the FBI, they won't. They stopped storming offices in pretty much the 80s with Jordan Belfort. But you're going to need like a RICO case or an actual criminal charge against someone to scare them. Repoing assets. Every dollar they made on a trade in the last 10 years, just repo it. Nobody's going to ever take it fucking seriously until someone gets charged criminally and they go to prison. How would you change, Hotch? And this is hypothetical because I know it's almost an impossible question, but how do you change the minds of the people benefiting into not benefiting?
It sounds like I don't know if you've ever watched the movie Mr.
Deeds?
Yeah, Mr. Deeds.
Yeah, I can
where
probably quote every word from the movie.
Okay, well then you're quite familiar. And that is verbatim the shareholder meeting. Is he has to convince, which is a movie scene and clearly fake. So in reality, how will you do that? Well, you gotta convince people to hate money, like you just said. And how do you do that?
Remove them all? I don't know. I don't even know the process of removing everyone from Congress. I don't know the process of not having 186-year-olds on the Supreme Court. Like, there's people dying on the Supreme Court. They were like alive during slavery. You know how hard it is to change a 90-year-old's opinion? I do it for a living. It's impossible. Sorry. Almost impossible. It's why I also want to, God, I should be in politics, but I'm not going to be taking insider trades. And if you don't do that, then you make almost nothing for money. But I have a speculation that anyone in Congress, Senate, Supreme Court, presidency should be under the age of 50. And I know that's extremely young when it comes to wisdom, but the people that want to change the world the most have young children. Not the people that have $250 million and they're 90 with great grandchildren. They don't give a shit. Like, they're probably on their yacht still talking about how they wish they had slavery. You know, so that's my personal opinion on politics and the age restriction. I would love, because then it would just always be progressive. With this 50, it would not be, I don't even give a shit. You don't even have to have term limits. You can at least out someone, but once they pass that age, they're gone automatically. And the new people coming in are probably going to be voted in if they have children. You know, if there's just like some random person, probably not going to get voted in, then that person's going to want to make a better world for their entire family. Nobody at the top wants to do that. We just had someone with esophagus cancer beat out AOC on the Democratic Party, and I'm not even a Democrat. That's ridiculous to me personally. But the age difference between the two is like, are you kidding me? Like, this person literally like won the election from a hospital bed last night. Literally. Fact.
The world we live in, with all this talk on insider trading and trying to, circumvent it, what would you propose as a way? And mind you, the number one proposal is blind trust. As somebody in the industry, you're familiar that blind trust don't exactly mean blind. What would your suggestion to fixing our insider trading issues be?
Sending one person to prison instantly. Someone that bought US Steel before the merger came through, like I posted on my X account a week beforehand from Congress, and the stock went from 30 to 50. Just send that person to prison, and I guarantee everyone else that's inside Congress is going to second think about shit. But that guy just high-fived all the regulators and police officers and FBI agents as he walked out of the building for crushing a trade he knew nothing about or a merger.
I am astounded how, on a regular basis, as being somebody that sort of partially lives in the financial world, I'm surprised by how many times I get shocked by new information. And I had not heard about that at all.
Oh, it's on my page. Yeah, just type in X. That's the actual symbol for US Steel. But here, I'll read it off on your show, Hotch.
Are you able to find that article?
Yeah, I got it right here. Tommy Tuberville, Congress, trade, November 7th, 2023. 1 month before the US Steel buyout offer, bought $15,000 worth of options. And that sounds like a low amount for Congress or someone that's successful. But with commodities, the options usually trade extremely low volatility and low movement, especially since X was already, let me go back, at pretty much a 4-year high. Okay. So who's buying those? Within 1 month, US Steel gets a buyout offer. He bought the options when the stock was at $35. and it opened up at $50 a share on the buyout offer, which would have been easily 1,000 bagger. $15,000 to $15 million on a tiny trade, and he knew nothing about it. He didn't. Oh wait, no, he did know about it. He got to vote on whether it goes through or not. He got to probably also buy puts to block the merger recently. I'll have to look into that for our next show, Hotch. But it got blocked recently, but it didn't matter. 15 grand to 15 million in 1 month. Like, how do you stop those people from wanting that info? Right? How do you convince them to not want that info? I'm gonna figure out the answer. Besides, actually, my theory for the last 2 years has been either our country calls us out on all this bullshit, or another country will. And if Japan or China or a massive investor in the United States markets, whether it's bonds, cash, treasuries, or stock market, just says, all right, you guys are complicit, it's all fake, which totally is, then it's all going to implode from that country going public with it. And I can't say guarantee. I strongly believe that they've already had talks with our presidents or incoming presidents to fix this, or they will call us out on it. But the problem has become so incredibly big from COVID's Black Swan event. Those puts in the winter of 2020 were worth trillions. And like, think of the largest market maker, Citadel, having like a balance sheet of 60 billion, and they're now down $1 trillion. But then they had a behind doors meeting with Trump, and that was the lowest day the market hit in March of 2020. And from then on out, it just all went up every day. And my speculation, they met there, they're like, hey, we fucked up for the 9,000th fucking time with over leveraging ourselves, just collecting premiums. We didn't think there was going to be a black swan event on all these puts. And now those puts that were 10 cents are now worth $100,000 each. And we owe $1 trillion. And so Trump's like, okay, so either the entire US stock market, which will then cause the world stock markets and financial markets to implode, or the Fed steps in and gives $8 trillion. And they're like, yeah, sorry.
So, Kevin, if you could alter one aspect of the current financial system, what would that specific thing be?
I would personally get rid of the market maker rule. They have special rules that allow them to create counterfeit stocks. Imagine a car dealership that has nothing, or that has 5 Hondas. And that day someone shows up, or a ton of people show up, and they buy 50 Hondas. They sell 50 pink slips for those, and they only have 10. And then they get 35 days to eventually deliver those people. And if they can't, they fail to deliver, FTD. And if that happens, they get like a frowny face on their report and nothing happens. So I would disintegrate the market maker exception, and I would get rid of them completely, because I think it is more fair for every single investor, not necessarily to pay a commission, since they're all just numbers on a computer, No physical shares are trading anymore. There is no T plus 1, 2, 3. It literally changes instantly. On like, you have a share, you have a share, you have a share, you have dollars, you have dollars, you have dollars, because you hit sell, right? So it can be done instantly. And I would rather have a real bid ask on the trade. So the lowest someone in the entire world is willing to sell Apple for is $250 a share. The highest bid today at that exact second is $200 a share. Massive $50 spread on the bid ask. But someone gets to at least make that decision. One of those two people, like a real market, like a farmer's market where you barter, not infinity liquidity and infinity shares sold, and we'll go find these for the next 35 days. It just needs to go back to bid and ask. Dark pools can still exist in the background. They were created for an amazing reason on ETFs and mutual funds to, if real bid ask existed and BlackRock's BlackRock's NASDAQ fund needs to purchase another 100,000 shares of NVIDIA, if they hit the buy button on that, it's going to there's not even going to be enough sellers.
It was for bulk order trades between institutions. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what dark pools were created for, to do these institutional trades behind the scenes. Someone has to liquidate some of that NVIDIA from their balanced portfolio because it became too big, to the non-market weighted where NVIDIA grew a shitload. And so they have to give them those shares. And that's what dark pools were doing behind the scenes. They weren't processing 7 shares of GameStop in dark pools in after hours and stuff like they were in 2021. Like, that's just total bullshit that they're doing. So that would be the thing that I change in the market. It's just the market maker exception is ridiculous. It's absolutely corrupt. Bernie Madoff created it, payment for order flow. Ken Griffin licked his nuts every single day and then did a way more genius move than Bernie did, and he paid everyone off. Griffin barely made any money he almost went bankrupt in 2008's crash. Like,
his words to
the dollar, like, had to go find dollars like Vlad Tenev to stay alive, and then implemented his plan. And for the next 10-ish years till 2018, didn't take a profit, paid everyone off. If you thought Epstein had a good list, wait until you see Griffin's of speaking fees and people he paid off on insider information from Congress, that he has all the meetings logged and everything like that. What are they going to say? Like, hey, if you say a single word, you go to prison.
Even Janet Yellen, she's been making bank.
Yeah. You know how? Ken pays her $5 million a year, 20 times her salary to speak.
But what does she say at those speaking
She
events
doesn't.
where she is making what normal people
She
would
doesn't.
make in multiple years?
You know what I mean? She doesn't say. Speaking fee doesn't mean you have to speak about something. It could also be a non-speaking fee.
That explains it perfectly. And this has been a great freaking conversation.
I had a blast.
I want to get one final question out of you.
Love it.
And that is, what piece of advice would you give yourself from 5 years ago to deal with the current circumstances?
So if I had to give myself advice 5 years ago, for everyone listening, the stuff I've learned in the last 5 years, mostly through GameStop, market corruption, everything that happened in 2020 and 2021 with my clients, would be to look at data, look at reports, look at SEC filings, even though those can be corrupt too, because CNBC is literally in the category of entertainment, not news. They don't have to tell the truth. So, don't get your info. Everyone that was on Wall Street Bets didn't get trading info from there. They got laughs. Like, people lost $100,000 and they're like, "Oh, I'll try again in another 15 years." But real news outlets around the entire world, and mostly the United States, mainstream media, second most genius thing I've ever seen, besides Ken Griffin paying off everyone, is the hedge funds in the 90s buying every single media company so they could push whatever they want. Don't look at the news. Do not look at the articles. Look at the earnings reports. Look at the numbers. Look at the share movement. And that will tell you the real story.
That is beautiful, Kevin. I almost have to add into this. I literally have a video queued up, and I just have to play it quick because this is spot
Let's
on
go.
what he is describing. This was from a few years ago, mind you.
Some individual names that you like right now and have actually been putting money in right now include Upstart, that is one, Tesla, MGM, and AIG. Why those four, all of which you've bought within, well, basically this week, except Tesla, end of last month?
Yeah, so Upstart's up about 25% just in 4 days since we bought it. We bought it on about 4 days ago, so that's actually made a nice little move in the short term, probably a little extended right now, but longer term, that's a good looking name, very powerful, very strong earnings. These stocks are
What do they
acting
do?
really
I don't even know them. What do they do?
Excuse me?
What does Upstart do?
Well, I'm sorry.
What kind of company is it?
Yeah, I'm not. You're breaking up.
Oh, well,
Sorry
I guess
about that.
we've got an audio problem there, Mark. I'm sorry.
That was just Mark on back in 2021 pumping Upstart without knowing what it does. And mind you, they're a loan provider and they say that they use AI to simplify their loan process and optimize it. But back then it was at like 200 and something or 300. Today it's all the way down at 70. Mind you, it's gone up 100% since then, but none of that is relevant because that guy, his fund literally bought it that week, is what the newscaster said.
You only have to buy one
Sure.
share to announce it, just like Kramer.
It's
you only have to buy
crazy.
one. You only have to buy one share. That dude doesn't even know what the company does. That's CNBC. That is what the majority of the wealth in the entire country watches every single day.
It's on at all the airports and random TV channels, and then
Yep.
the people that
After
watch
the hedge
it.
funds bought the media companies, the pushing of stocks goes both ways. So he doesn't even know what the hell he's talking about. Literally, we just saw it. But he was told, in my opinion, and what CNBC does and Kramer does every single night, in my opinion, is to get people to buy in at the top. Why? Because that's when all the insiders sell. Push up at the top, and then you have what's that D-bag's name that shorted the market? Who just went after Icon and shorted IEP?
Citron Research.
No, that dude's literally the definition of douchebag as well. No,
Hindenburg.
Ackman just shorted IEP. Sorry, I got my Christmas lights on. They're all shining through. Ackman just shorted Icon Enterprises. And I will never forget where I was sitting in my lockdown Edward Jones office because COVID is full blown going nuts in 2020. And Ackman says, like, the whole world's going to burn and he's shorting everything. And it's all going down another 50%. And then, like, a few days later, they had the Trump meeting and the market just ripped up hundreds of percent since then. And all he had to do was short one ETF share of the market to say that on the air and totally get everyone to sell so he could get the lowest buy-in price. That's what they'll do. When you see blood in the street, just go. Fucking Warren Buffett's been the best of all time. I don't even think he knows what a TV is. And he goes, hey, when everyone's screaming that the world's ending, I'm going to buy. And when everyone says Bitcoin and the stock market's going to $1 trillion each, sell when everyone gets greedy. And Buffett's sitting on his largest cash pile in history right now. Well, the news media is saying that the economy is great and everything's good. And we're into the Trump era where it's good for business and stuff. And literally this guy gets it right so big every 10 years that he's made tens of billions of dollars more than anyone else just by going long without options. Probably 100%, probably 99% insider information in there too. Once you get big enough, you know, companies, Coca-Cola and stuff that he's invested in forever. But he still sees exuberance. Him selling Apple at 180 a share, and now it's at 250. Everyone, every 10 years, just makes fun of him. And then he ends up buying these companies for like $90 a share 2 years later when everything implodes. And he just goes like this for another 10 years while his returns have crushed everything. He says he makes more money in crashes than he does in bull markets, always. He bought Citibank and Wells and Bank of America for like 30 cents during 2008 crash after they dropped like 95%.
Oh, I would get me some 30-cent freaking bank shares,
Right.
even though I don't really trust their business models. At 30
Yeah,
cents,
but at that time they didn't have
wrong.
these electronic banks and stuff like that. So, like, what are you going to do? You're either going to get rid of banking or they'll survive? Okay, that's an easy decision.
It's a risk, as all investments are.
Yep. Oh, 100%.
And to your one point about the, you know, not being for the billionaires and that they don't watch TV, Lamborghini literally has no ads that are shown on TV because people that can afford a Lamborghini don't watch TV.
I can't remember that quote either. They don't watch TV. People that buy Lamborghinis don't watch TV.
Yep, and that's why they don't advertise with commercials.
Love it.
Never see a Lamborghini ad.
Love it.
This has been a great conversation. We could keep it going for so much longer,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
we gotta cut it. It's been a great night. If people want to learn more about you, what you're doing, and all that, what is the easiest place to find you, or what are your tags?
Uh, Easiest place to find me is probably on X, at Malone underscore wealth. And then, all my contact info and stuff's on there. Pretty done with Reddit, on Blue Sky, but it's just a slow start there. But X is definitely the fastest way to get a hold of me. Fastest way to ask me a question any day is to hop onto one of my space calls, because I think I still have like more than 400 DMs I haven't gotten to this year. I just don't check them. But if you listen to one of my space calls, I have to ask people to come up to ask questions, and you will get a chance every single time on there. So that's definitely the fastest way to get a hold of me or ask me a question. Hosh, it was a pleasure, man. That was a really fun show.
Hey, this was great. Thank you.
Worse.
Excellent to have you. You hypothetically, or however you want to put it, popped my podcast cherry. So thank you specifically. All right.
No problem. No problem. No problem, buddy.
Thanks for joining me tonight on the first episode of Notch by Notch with Hotch. I enjoyed having a conversation with Kevin Malone where we went into the issues with the pipeline that runs from regulatory bodies straight into the banks and institutions that they are meant to regulate, over to the fact that financial analysts are able to pump different companies or products on mainstream media live with no repercussions or without any knowledge of what that company or product is or does. So be sure to follow, like, subscribe, and share with your friends, because this entire podcast is about teaching retail investors about the truths in the financial industry that are not taught to anyone because they are a little spicy and controversial. But thanks for joining me. Doses and mimosas.